Let me hear it, Rod.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the focusing on the feeling. I found it
Hmm.
harder to like stay focused. So like I'd get lost in the feeling and then exploring like all sorts of feelings and sensations that were available in my body.
Hmm.
And sometimes like it led me on weird journeys. I had like one of the darkest meditations I've ever had the other day. I did start with meta for that one particularly, but it was stunningly beautiful and richly informative and just dark. But it was just like the following the feeling of pleasure just rolled further and further and further. So it just sort of, I just followed it. But yeah, it was beautiful and it was rich, but it was easy to get lost in rather than having a focal point of like a specific mantra.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that because I heard you say it was very beautiful and insightful, but dark.
Mm.
Uh, Tell me how it was dark.
As I was following the feelings, I was like, like the feeling of say pleasure, I'd follow that, and I'd feel like I'd notice a tension through my
Hmm.
torso. So then I'd feel the tension, and then I felt um, like anger sort of present or a dark something, and then so I just felt that, and then that
Hmm.
moved, and then it was replaced by something else. So it was like unleashing stored shit in my body, like just
Sure.
dark. Whether it was, look, there's no specific flavor. Like I couldn't say I was angry or I was anything. Like it was just there was like anger or darkness. It was. I don't really know how to put words on it. Like it's.
You're
I'm
doing a
hearing
good
my.
job.
Oh really? Because I
Yeah.
feel lost in it at the moment. But it it kind of just flowed from one thing to the next, and the more I allowed it to come, the more it
Hmm.
came. But then the feeling at the end of the meditation was I just felt so beautiful. So it
Hmm.
was just really odd
Yeah.
to have, yeah, all those. So I just allowed myself to immerse myself into whatever feelings arose. And so there wasn't anything specific, like I had no like call to action, so to speak.
Hmm.
um but yeah, it was just dark. Yeah.
So you began your meditation period with the intention to do the nurture positive feel good technique, but at some
Yeah.
point you noticed a window opened up
Yeah.
and you felt some sticky stuff, but in that moment you decided just to ride that wave. Now, here's my
Yes.
question for you.
Oh, okay.
Were these, quote, dark feelings, negative feeling states, were they attached to any kind of internal mental talk?
Like a story or something?
Mm-hmm.
No, that was
Mm-hmm.
what was peculiar. That's
Mm-hmm.
what almost made them beautiful. There was no like loop or story. And I'm definitely strong in running stories and
Sure.
loops in my head, like for sure. It's definitely one of my fall down points. But there wasn't a situation to attach any of it to. It was just there. So I just kept feeling it.
You would characterize it as just the arising and passing of
Yeah.
afflictive emotional states.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like what I noticed was like throughout my day as I went through my day, I would feel sometimes pleasurable, sometimes, not pleasurable feelings, but my response to whatever was happening in life at the moment had something to do with whatever feeling was present in my body, whether I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to feel it or avoid it. Does that
Mm-hmm.
make sense?
Sure.
So it was kind of like, what I noticed was that how I respond changes based on whether I want to avoid feeling whatever's present or if I'm
Mm-hmm.
willing to feel whatever's present.
Sure.
And so if I want to say, if there's something, some tension or anxiety present and I don't want to feel it, my response will be protective and to move away, but not necessarily authentic, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Whereas if I allow myself to feel whatever's present first, then often my response or whatever's happening, I have a totally different experience of.
Sure.
That's what I got out of it.
Because it sounds like there's a little more of a conscious choice as to how you respond rather than just unconsciously react in an effort not to feel something that you don't want to feel. And this
Yeah.
all happens like that. My teacher
Yeah.
says we have 3/10 of a second before the terrorists take the building. It means we have to keep our finger on the button with mindfulness and be hyper aware of what is happening right now. Otherwise, unconscious programming just steals the show. And then we're saying that thing that we wish we didn't say, or doing that thing that we wish we weren't doing.
Yeah, yeah. And I had no awareness those feelings were ever there.
Sure.
And if you asked me if I was an aware person, I would have said yes. Now I'm going to say no. But yeah, I would have thought I would have been present to whatever feelings were available, but I absolutely wasn't. And reacting even good things was still a reaction to something that was happening within.
So thank you for sharing that. That's very useful for tonight's class. Everything that you said is just, I want you to know, is par for the course and progress. It sounds like you stumbled upon some real insights. Does anyone remember the 4 ways that we experience emotion? I know I mentioned it maybe once or twice. It's okay. It took me, my teacher said this a million times before I actually remembered it. So listen up. Self-generated thoughts. We think our way into an afflictive emotion. And in this last week of practice, we all had the taste that, okay, we're actually able to also think our way into positive emotions. The second way is the reaction to the conditions of the present moment. Something happens in the present moment that elicits an emotion in our body. For example, somebody jumps out and scares you and you feel a moment of fear, or you see something sad and you feel sadness, or someone tells you a joke and you laugh. These are all logical reactions to the conditions of what is happening right now. The third way is that we are built to attune to one another as human beings. Our nervous systems are very sensitive and we can feel what other people are feeling. If someone's telling you a story of something difficult that they're going through, you might feel in your body what they're feeling in their body through empathetic connection. So we can feel each other. Now, the fourth way is what Rob was talking about. The release of stored somatic emotions that were vestiges of things that happened in our past. But whatever it was, it exceeded our bandwidth to fully metabolize in the present moment. So our body stored it for later processing. And if we're not training the mind to be present, then we can conflate the difference between a release of stored emotional trauma and the reaction to the conditions of the present moment. We can, in our confusion and our lack of clarity, we can behave as if something that happened a long time ago and is now just being let go of has its roots in the right now moment. But what Rod just talked about, and the very important part, the question that I asked him was, did you notice that some stream of consciousness led you to these feelings of anger and stuff? And he said, no, anger just came and went. So what happened was Rod got still enough, got quiet enough, got concentrated enough that his body decided, okay, now it feels like a good time to unwind that thing that happened a while back. And so there's a release, and that's a liberation. Now, when Rod's in his practice, he developed equanimity, so he was able just to ride that wave of something that was uncomfortable, but watch it come and go. Now, I would imagine, Rod, that it lasted somewhere between 3 and 8 seconds. Because if it's really intense, these waves will last for maybe 10 seconds. But we can just ride the wave, and what we will do, what the mind will do, thinking that it's protecting us, will, in an effort to remove ourselves from that release, think a thought. Think a thought that will generate a different emotion that will spare us from having to feel that thing that we were never able to feel. Is everyone with me? So an emotional regulation strategy that a lot of us are using, if we're not training our mind, is we're regulating the release of afflictive emotions by generating afflictive emotions. That's pretty exhausting. So every time something old our body tries to let go of it, we put the lid back on and generate some afflictive emotion that we're comfortable with feeling. And like I said, this all happens like that. It's very hard to even notice without training. But as you're beginning to sink into your practice, you're really starting to get a bird's eye view of what is happening with this system. And it's not that you're doing anything wrong, it's just the way you learn to regulate your emotions. We all come from different families, different conditions. These operating mechanisms are passed down from generation to generation, but some of them are pretty shitty. And so as we're growing up in this practice, we recognize, okay, you know what? That's not really working for me. Maybe it's time to implement a new system. So one of the things we're going to talk about tonight is bringing this practice to difficult situations. For example, Rod shared that he was on his cushion and he was feeling this letting go. My teacher calls it the pool of poison and pain. Eckhart Tolle calls it the pain body. For whatever reason, it decided to start letting go of some old stuff. Now, another thing I'll mention, it's useless to try to come up with what these emotions are even about, or this must have been that time when I got beat up in 3rd grade. Maybe. My teacher says trying to put a story to the releases of these emotions from the pool is like taking a quart of oil and trying to figure out which plants make it up. By then, it's so old and mashed up and it's all intertwined together. It's no longer plants, it's just oil. See what I'm trying to say? So the skillful thing to do is just be equanimous with what's coming and let it go as best you can. Now, sometimes in the practice, it might get pretty intense and you might start to feel overwhelmed. At that time, it's totally a good idea to back away. Just maybe even come out of your meditation or to shift to a different technique. Feel good, for example, or focus out. Allow your attention to travel outside of your body mind to the external sound or external sight or the feeling of your body. We don't want to, there's a fork in the road here. At one side is what we talked about last week, spiritual bypass. This view that, okay, this practice I just want to feel good all the time. If I'm meditating, then I should just be chipper and have a pep in my step and be peaceful all the time. And if I'm not, then I must be doing something wrong. That's not my experience in this practice. And I don't think it's the experience of anyone who's really about that life. Part of this path is feeling the shitty stuff that we've been successfully able to avoid. That's why this path is really, in my view, warrior's work, because it's a radical turning toward the shit. Now, the upside is, as you start to allow those vestiges of emotional, energetic gunk in your body to dissipate through your practice, you have more energy. It takes an enormous amount of energy to suppress all of that stuff and hold it beneath the level of your conscious awareness. And as it starts to be metabolized and released, the energy that you were using to hold everything together in a clench is now made available to you. So you have a pep in your step. I look at my teacher. I have 2 teachers who are older guys. Shinzen's like, I don't know, must be in his 70s. The man's got a lot of energy because he's not holding on to anything. I have more energy now than I've ever had before in my life. And there was a time in my life where I was just very lethargic because there was so much gunk inside of me. So one side is spiritual bypass. We want to avoid that. The other side is like masochism. Like, oh, I have this toxic stuff in my body. I just have to feel it. And you become like a whipping boy to your own practice. You think that you're doing yourself a favor, but really you're not being gentle with yourself. So we can go too far in the wanting to feel good all the time side of practice, and we can go too far in the I have to release all this toxic stuff and I have to be feeling it all the time. And you see how both kind of miss the point. So we want to find the middle path. It's totally an option for any one of us to cultivate and nurture positivity. We all had the experience of that this week, I hope. And if you haven't already had the experience of the difficult moments in your meditation practice, and not just the frustration of having to sit still and the mind just not being quiet, but I mean, some difficult stuff coming up. If you stick with it, you will. But know that it's progress, it's liberation. And as long as, pop quiz, what is the most important skill in the liberation of these afflictive, stored afflictive emotions? Right.
Equanimity.
Equanimity, exactly. Just let it be the way it is. One of my teachers talks about it as these pools start to unwind. You just kind of sit there on your cushion and you feel this tidal wave come, but whatever that thing is for you. It could be anger, it could be fear, it could be sadness. And you just ride that wave. You just let it crash over you. But at some point, the wave subsides and you're still there. And you're still there. And you're more free than you were 6 seconds ago. And these are the things that play out in life. Remember, the whole goal of this practice is to bring it into our every waking moment. So how would it look if we're being puppeted by stored somatic emotions in life? Well, something like reaching for another drink, or Netflix binging, or come on, we can go. The list goes on and on of afflicted behaviors that we're all engaged in that we wish we weren't doing. The driver for most of them is unconscious afflictive emotions that we're feeling, but we're not actually feeling. You see what I mean? Just because you're not really crystal clear aware of it doesn't mean that it's not puppeting your behavior at a level that maybe we just haven't cultivated the sensitivity to feel. You guys understand what I'm trying to say? Cool. So did I see anyone else's hand shoot up about last week's practice? Okay. So we don't have a new technique to introduce tonight, but what I do want to do is take you guys through the practice and review what we've done thus far, and maybe find some more subtleties and nuances in the practice. And then we'll have some time for any questions that come up, and we'll talk more about bringing the practice to life, difficult moments, using this skill of mindfulness, not just to become good meditators during our formal practice period, but to live skillfully on planet Earth, to act with intention and to be aware of what we're feeling. Okay, so let's begin practice. We're going to sit for maybe 25 minutes or so. So I'll ask everyone to get in your comfortable upright meditation posture. And if you like, you can close your eyes. And just take a moment to check in with your body. You might scan the face for any tension. And just go ahead and let it go. Allow the shoulders to fall away from the ears. Find a comfortable position for your hands. And as you know, we're looking for that middle ground between relaxation and alertness, between slouching and having perfect posture. One of the cues we'll often give in the practice of Qigong is to allow your flesh just to fall from your bones. No tension. Let's just take a minute or so to follow the breath. We can begin to warm up our meditative skills of concentration, clarity, and equanimity just by following the breath in and out. breathing in, know that you are breathing in. Breathing out, know that you are breathing out. You might imagine the body-mind relaxing more and more deeply with every exhale. And now, bringing the fullness of your attention to feel space, both internal bodily emotions and external physical sensations. Allow any auditory sensations or visual sensations just to play out in the background of your awareness, and really bring your focus just to feel space. If you find the rhythmic noting strategy useful, you just use the internal mental label feel for any arising and feel space, both internal and external. Just feel. Continuing to soak your attention into feel space, you may begin to notice the qualities of rest or flow. Those qualities are available to you, and go ahead and soak into them. You have the option to label them by name. Remember that flow is not esoteric, it's just any detectable quality of movement. The breath, for example, is a reliable way to access flow. And now letting go of feel space and bringing the totality of your attention to hear space. both external sound and internal mental talk, allowing feel and see to play out in the background, bringing the fullness of your attention to here space. If you find the noting strategy useful, use the internal mental label here. Just here. The qualities of rest and flow are also available here in here space. You may be able to detect them. Remember that rest is just the absence of any sound whatsoever. Flow, a little more subtle in here space, will just be movement, vibration. Letting go now of here space and bringing your attention to visual space. The eyes are closed and your focus will just be on the internal visual field, allowing any sensory arisings from feel space or hear space just to play out in the background. Option to use the internal mental label C for any sensory arising in internal visual space. Just see. As you may already be able to perceive, rest and flow are available here in C space. Rest, just the absence of any visual activity. Flow could appear as a cascading of shapes or colors. subtle movement, oscillating grayscale images. If those qualities are available to you, then soak in. If not, no big deal. And now, removing any restrictions whatsoever on our attention, just allowing it to bounce around as it will. Now, shifting to an open awareness practice, our traditional see, hear, feel technique. Noting for internal and external feel space, internal and external hear space, internal and external see space. You could note and label any arising of rest or flow as well in any of the three sense gates. Just notice where your attention is pulled and label it. See, hear, or feel. If you notice that the mind has wandered away from the practice, remember that's just internal mental talk. It's just grist for the mill. It's just here in. If you're noticing something interesting coming up, that's a window. Just soak into it, see where it leads. If you're finding the practice frustrating and wondering when we'll stop, that too is a window. You could allow frustration to become the object of your meditation. Really feel it located in your body. Notice its subtleties and nuances. Notice its arising and passing. Anything that is happening is an opportunity to practice with. And now shifting gears from the appreciate quadrant to the nurture quadrant, finishing our practice with a few minutes of feel good, nurture positive. Remember, you have the option to hold a positive visualization in internal sea space, to repeat a soothing affirmation or mantra in here space. Just ring the bell of positivity. And as it starts to take effect, locate that positivity in the body. Allow it to become your object of concentration. Remember, an old school, tried and true method to cultivate positivity is just the smile, a subtle smile. When you smile, your whole body smiles. Feel good. And in a moment, we will end our formal period of practice. We'll have time for a dialogue and Q&A. I encourage you to decide now what technique you'll be running as a background practice while we are engaged in our conversation. The formal meditation practice is now ending, but remember, there's always the opportunity to practice something. And the degree to which we are conscious of what we're practicing is the degree to which our lives are well lived. When you're ready, you can allow your eyes to open. I'll let you guys take a minute to find your sea legs, and then you can tell me how that went for you. Any questions about anything at all? So I'll share. I did have a lightning bolt of insight that I want to share with you guys. It just came to me. But I didn't think my way into it. Just an analogy just became very clear right at the end of the practice with regard to what we were talking about earlier. Self-generated afflictive emotions and releases from the pool of poison and pain, old stored gunk that's collected in the body. Maybe I should have thought about this analogy a little more before I just wing it on you guys, but bear with me. So we can think of the body like a weather system. And rain is important, right? For the fertility of the crops and the soil, rain serves a purpose. So we could think of the release of that stored stuff like rain, but it's actually beautiful and it's a purification and it's necessary. And this nurture positivity practice that we just engaged in at the end of our meditation period a moment ago, we could think of that like a sunny spring day that we can actually manifest in our body mind, which is also very useful for the health of the soil and the crops and the birds and the bees. Now, we can think of self-generated afflictive emotional thinking as pollution that just fucks everything up. It doesn't serve a purpose. And so we can engage this practice and we can stop polluting the world, the ecosystem of our body mind. We can allow it to rain when it rains. It might even be a volcano or an earthquake, but it's for the greater good. And when nature isn't raging, as she often does, we can rest into a gentle spring day. We can create that for ourselves. So we start through this practice, we start to feel that we have much more stewardship over our present moment experience than maybe we've given ourselves credit for. So let it rain when it rains. Give yourself the gift of a spring day and cut down on the CO2 emissions. Cool? Anyone else have anything they want to share? Or should I just keep blabbing at you guys? Jimmy.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, bud.
Hey, I've just got a quick question around the feel good meditation, because I'm thinking that I'm struggling with it a little bit because it doesn't feel natural. What is surfacing? What's surfacing? I suppose what Rod was speaking about before. But when the energy's flowing, and I feel like I'm trying to push to feel good. of such. And maybe I'm not comfortable in feeling good in those moments, in transcending in those moments.
Sure.
I've never felt that maybe before, and maybe I'm uncomfortable in that. Maybe there's a resilience against that, or that I'm maybe potentially, I don't know if I'm doing it right as well, of what maybe I'm getting mismatched with something, or
so I hear you loud and clear. Did you happen to catch the recording from last week?
Yes.
Okay. So what you're reporting is quite common. It feels kind of fake. It feels kind of forced. It doesn't feel authentic. But you have to bear in mind that you may be leaning into a skill that you haven't been practicing at all in your daily life. Feeling good for a lot of us is so foreign that it doesn't feel real. Now you may be practicing other less pleasant emotional states, but unconsciously to the point where they feel very normal, and generating positivity feels forced and fake. You could almost think of it like, I have a background in physiology and fitness. So we talk about under-facilitated muscles. Some people, like in a squat, for instance, because of their posture or their gait, their glutes don't fire. They're under-facilitated. So it takes a lot of work to bring the glutes online. So we have to do specific exercises to wake that part of the body up. But it's similar with nurturing positivity. It might feel a little fake, a little forced, but it's just an under-facilitated muscle that's not firing. So we got to breathe some life into that thing. So allow it to feel a little bit fake, a little bit forced. It's totally normal. It's totally okay. And then as you start to gain some momentum in the practice, you might feel that you hit a stride where, wow, this actually feels real. I feel good.
Yeah.
So you're starting to lean into this insight. You're getting there where you're exercising stewardship. Remember, the mind can generate emotions. So all of us, the negative aspect of that is the mind generates afflictive emotions. But now we're starting to see, wait a minute, if this power can be used for evil, then it can be used for good. But it feels a little sticky at first. So just be patient with yourself, but stick with the practice. I think this technique will be a good one for you. I encourage you.
It's been great, man. It's really been appreciative. But it's just that last one I was just struggling with a bit. Yeah, but that what you just said makes sense.
Yeah, be easy with yourself. Be easy with yourself. It's a new technique. It's brand new, so let it be a little clunky for a little while, but you'll get it.
Yeah, right on.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, my brother. Thanks for your question.
Thanks.
So I'll just briefly say the theme I want you guys to take into this week is bringing the fruits of your practice to a situation in life that you're maybe struggling with. Could be some behavior that you're wanting to avoid that you keep finding yourself doing, or some behavior that you want to start doing but you keep procrastinating about. It might be a difficult conversation with someone. It might be, I don't know, stopping snacking at night. Does everyone have an idea of what it could be for you? And then I want you to bring the skills of your practice to those moments. Concentration, clarity, and equanimity. You might, let's say it's a difficult conversation perhaps, or you have to address something at work that's a little, you've been avoiding it, a tough conversation. So a good idea might be, okay, you're going to take a 3-minute micro hit before you have the conversation. You're going to remain in your body during and be completely really available for what feelings are coming up. Do your best to be non-reactive to them, but stay firm and hold your ground. And after the conversation, you're going to give yourself permission to take another 3-minute micro dose to just maybe be with your breath or cultivate positivity. See what I'm trying to say? It doesn't have to be just like that. I mean, you guys have creative license here. You've been given, this is week 7. We got 1 week left. Man. But you've been given a lot of tools. So combine them any way that you see fit. Bring this practice off your cushion into your life and see what you can come up with. Now, so that's going to be kind of the practice in life. As usual, we're going to stick with our 10-minute formal meditation period, sitting practice, and you can use any technique that you want and maintain your background practice and your micro hits. But we're at the point now where, you guys, your practice is your responsibility. Something interesting comes up in your practice, follow it. Often you'll go, if you stick in with this for the long haul, you might go through phases of what's interesting to you and what's not. Nurturing positivity. If your mind is consistently unkind to you, that's a really good technique to stick with. And then as you can reliably cultivate positivity and reliably facilitate good feelings, that serves as a motivator to go deeper into the kind of stuff that Rod was sharing about earlier, leaning into the gunk in the back of the closet, allowing for that deep clean. But if you know that you can reliably feel okay, and you have techniques that you're comfortable with that can reliably help you feel good, then that's a motivator to go into the gunk. And if it gets too hot in there, then get out. Don't be too hard on yourself. You have to find this balance of feeling good and liberating the stuff that's not serving us. Right? And we'll find the middle path, and don't be too hard on yourself, and don't be too soft on yourself. We have a few minutes left if anyone has a question. All right. Then this will conclude our week 7. We will be meeting again here, same time, same channel, next week for our final class. All right, I want to thank you guys for showing up this evening, and I hope you all have a beautiful week. See you next week.